Haven't you thought how great it would be if you were able to get just the relevant details from the whole data set without actually needing to go through them completely? And what if you are given the option to get the relevant details where you need not study the data sets at all? Isn't that great? Yes, that's what the most powerful tool in Microsoft Excel has to offer, which is nothing but pivot table. Using pivot table, you can sort and summarize the data in the sheet based on our requirements. I am Tony Tom and I'll be guiding you here to learn more about pivot table. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new update or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoyed this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing, so make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on this video any queries or suggestions and I will respond to your comments. Hello friends, welcome to Great Learning. In this video, we'll be spending some time together on learning pivot table in the platform Microsoft Excel. Let's move on and see what are the topics which is being covered in the video. What is pivot table and why is it important? I know there are a lot of people who use the software Microsoft Excel and still don't know what pivot table is. For them, we'll be explaining briefly what pivot table is and what is its importance. We'll be talking about its significance and advantage of using a pivot table in the initial part of the video itself. After having an idea on pivot table, we'll be directly moving on to the platform Microsoft Excel and learn how to create a pivot table. After understanding how to create a pivot table, there are a lot of ways in which we'll be able to implement pivot table in the platform Microsoft Excel. So we'll be talking on the ways or method in which we'll be able to sort or summarize data from a data sheet using pivot table. After understanding all these things, towards the end of the video, we'll also be talking about the various tools which Microsoft Excel provides us for implementing pivot table. So let's get started with the video with knowing more about pivot table. Pivot table and its importance. Pivot table is actually a small table consisting of few rows and columns which provides the complete idea on what the datasheet is trying to convey. We need not go to the datasheet and give a study on it to understand. We could just create a pivot table of our requirement to understand what the datasheet is trying to convey. Thereby, it will be more easy and convenient for us to know what is being conveyed to us in the datasheet. We'll also be able to interpret the data based on several factors using pivot table. Consider you are given a datasheet consisting of a lot of details like ordering date, manufacturing date, product ID, product name, quantity, customer name, and all those data are being depicted in the datasheet which is given to you. From the sheet, what if you're asked to get the details of the customers who have bought a particular item? So usually what you should be doing is you should go to the particular data sheet and then try to find out who all has bought that particular item. So cell by cell you go and check who all has bought that particular item, right? So instead of doing that is a tiring process, right? So you need to go through complete cells and identify who all has bought that particular item. So instead of doing that, let us use pivot table. So just by creating a pivot table, you will be automatically getting the details of the customers who has bought that particular item. Isn't that more easy and convenient for you rather than going to the data sheet and identifying from each of the cells in the sheet? So that's all about a pivot table. And that is the main reason why is it important for you to use a pivot table rather than moving to the data sheet and trying to find out the details from that sheet. Now let's move on to the platform Microsoft Excel and learn how we can create a pivot table there. Now let's learn how to create pivot table. We are already in the platform Excel and using this data which is available to us, let's try how to create pivot table so that it will be easy and convenient for us to interpret the data which is being conveyed to us in this particular sheet. So in order to create pivot table, it will be made available in the insert ribbon, pivot table. Just by clicking on pivot table, we'll be having a pop-up box coming and it will be asking for the table or range of selection from which the data should be segregated, right? So the selection is actually made automatically using the software, and that is the right selection made. So I'm not doing anything there. And after that, it also asks where you want the pivot table to be, on a new worksheet or in the same existing worksheet. So I need to have it on a completely new worksheet. So I'm going forward with new worksheet and clicking OK. See, now I have been transferred to a completely new worksheet where I'll be building my pivot table based on the data which was available to us in that particular sheet. So it is made available in sheet 1, and in orders we'll be having all the data which was imparted. So I am making it like this. And here, if you look through the data, we'll be understanding that in the data they convey the order placing date, the customers who have placed the orders, product ID, units, product name, price, and locations. So based on these informations, we need to be creating the pivot table. And in the pivot table section, we are already having those elements here: order placing date, customer name, product ID, units, product name, price, location. All those things are made available in the pivot table options as well, right? So we'll be able to start creating a pivot table just by selecting any element and dragging and dropping it to any of these columns. Okay, so let's try. So I'm dragging price into the value column. So I'll be getting the sum of price in the pivot table. But actually this doesn't make much sense, right? So let's try adding more things to the pivot table. So let me try adding customer name. So towards each of the rows, I'm adding customer's name. So I'll be getting the pivot table with the respective customers and the amount of purchase which they have done in that particular store. Okay, so I have already got that. So what if just try moving this customer to columns? See, all those things will be appearing in column. So all those customers and the price which they have spent on the store will be coming on each of the columns. But this doesn't find so attractive or convenient for us to read through. So I am making it reverse. So I'm getting it back to the rows. So all the customers are coming in different rows. We can increase the understanding of the data just by increasing the column, so that we'll be having more data to us and more convenient for us to understand the data. So I'm adding location to the columns. So online and official store. So both these are coming in separate columns. Now we are having a detailed breakup on the purchase. So we are not only getting the prices or the amount which is being spent by each of the customers, we are also getting an idea on where they have spent. Have they spent through online mode or offline mode? That idea or that information is being passed on very easily using pivot table. Now the only one remaining is filters. We haven't tried filters but everything else. Let's see what filters do. Let's try adding product name to filters. Nothing has happened to the table apart from a new cell being added here, which is product name, right? So all the data in the table remains the same. At the same time, one cell is being added. Let's say you want to filter out the data which is being depicted in the table. So what if you don't want to see all the data or all the purchases made by each of the customers? You just want to know who has bought a particular item. If that need to be made possible, we have to use the option filters. And in filters, we have already added product name, right? So in product name, we should be choosing which particular product you want to see. So only those customers who have purchased that particular product will be depicted in the table. So I've already dropped down product name to filters, and it is already being depicted in the first cell. So go to the drop down arrow here and then select the product which you want to be depicted. All the others will be eliminated and only the customers who have bought that particular item will be depicted in the pivot table. So let's say I am selecting stapler. So after selecting stapler and clicking OK, all these data will be modified in such a manner that only the persons or only the customers who have ordered or who have purchased stapler will be depicted. Let's see. So I have selected stapler and clicking OK. See, all those customers, I'll zoom in a bit. See, all those customers who have purchased stapler are being depicted now. All other customers are not. We'll be able to filter out all those things using filter option which is made available in pivot table. Now let's go back to the initial condition which showed all the customers and see in how many ways we'll be able to sort the data in the pivot table, or in how many ways we'll be able to summarize the data in the pivot table. So I'm going to the normal position. Let me select all and then OK. So I have selected all and I have got all the details of the purchases which is being made by each of the customers. Now let's see in how many ways we'll be able to convey, summarize or sort the data using pivot table. So here we know that all these things are represented as values, right? So apart from that, what if you need to see it in some other way? So for that, sum of price is there. So just click on that and you'll be seeing the option value field settings. And after choosing that, you'll also be having a dialog box here where you will be able to present that as sum, count, average, maximum, minimum, product. All these options are being made available to us in this platform. So here how we depict the values are as sum, not count, average, maximum, minimum, but we have taken sum. So that is what the several ways of having the data in the pivot table. So apart from that, in the tab show value as, so now we have not done any calculations. So if we need to do any calculations and we need to present this data based on some calculations, that can also be made possible here. So for that, just click on here and you will be able to find a lot of options. Percentage of grand total, percentage of column total and all those things. So I'm selecting percentage column total. Okay. I'm selecting that and I'm clicking OK. So all these things will be considered in percentage. I have taken column, right? So in each column, it will be representing for 100%, and all these shares will be divided according to the purchases which was made by each of the customers. So by viewing this table, we'll be able to know that in grand total, it shows 15% of the purchase is made by Kiran. So without going to the data set, we'll be able to find that maximum purchase is already done by Kiran. So see, there's no other. The second highest is 14%, which is done by Bobby, and then 11 by Sachin. So we'll be able to get a data or interpret the data or have an idea of what the data is trying to convey through pivot table. Let's try out in a different way as well. So now we have got the percentage proportion based on the purchase made by each of the customers. What if you want to get the details for each of the product which was sold? Okay, so that can also be done. So for that, what I'm doing is simply taking customer section away and adding product name towards the row. So here I'll be getting the percentage of sale for each of the product. Here we'll be able to know that 32% of the product was being sold by stapler. See, out of all these products, 32% of the amount was done by the sale of stapler, and 21% by bucket, 18% by selling calculator. All these data can be interpreted using pivot table, and it also helps you to forecast and manage your inventory in such a manner that you'll not be running out of stock. So what if you need to see the value as currencies? So if it is in Indian rupee, you need to see the amount in Indian rupees. So how can that be made possible? Let me show you. So first for that, we should change from the percentage to value. So there should not be any calculations based on percentages, right? So initially we should be removing that, and then we shall apply currency to each of the value. So in order to remove the percentage, we need to go here, value field settings, and then show value as. Here I'm going to select no calculations and click OK. So all the calculations on percentage which was done is already removed. So now let's try to present the values as currencies. For that, let me go here, value field settings. An amount is always a sum, right? So in order to get the value as currency, we should be keeping it as sum itself. And in order to get the currency, or in order to get the value represented as a currency, we should be going for number format. And then you'll be having the option of currency here. And then you'll be able to select the decimal places. How many decimal places do you want? I don't need any, so I'm making it 0. And then I'm clicking on OK. So I'm getting the values as currencies, right? So that can also be made possible while implementing pivot table in Excel. Now, what if you need to have a detailed breakdown on the purchases made on each of the products? So here you will be able to see books, bottle, bucket, till stapler, right? So these are the products which you have been selling or the company has been selling. So what if you need to have a detailed breakdown on who has purchased each of these products? So under each of these products, you need to know who all has made the purchases. So how can that be made to the pivot table? So in order to get the details of the people who have bought the corresponding items, for that what we should be doing is select the customers and drag it down to the rows. See, now we are able to know a detailed breakup on each of the products. So for books, Bobby, Sachin, Sania has purchased. Sania has purchased through online mode and spent an amount of 55. Sachin and Sania, they both have spent 55 and they have come to the store and they have bought it. So total amount of purchase done for the books is 165. Similarly, for any other product, say stapler. The stapler was bought by 4 people, that is Bobby, Gopal, Kiran and Robin, and a total amount of 1,125 was spent on purchasing stapler, out of which 675 was spent on online mode and 450 was spent on offline mode, and Bobby has spent 450, Gopal 225, Kiran 225 and Robin 225. So we are able to get a detailed breakup on the purchases or on the sales which they have been doing. So using pivot table, it comes in handy for us to get the relevant details very easily, even without going to the details and understanding the data set completely. Just by using pivot table, we'll be able to get in the required and relevant value with much ease. Now let's see what are the various tools available to us in Excel so that we'll be able to create pivot table in a more convenient and ideal manner. Some of the tools mentioned here are layout, style, insert slicer, data source and refresh. Coming to layout tool. Layout tool helps you to change the layout of the table without affecting or without imparting any change in the data which is present within the table. You will be able to change subtotals, grand totals, any other layouts, any other rows which is present within the table. In style tool, you have the option to modify the headers, and also you will be able to implement banded rows or column. Insert slicer is actually one kind of filter. It is more convenient and ideal for us to use insert slicer in order to easily change the input and get the updated output very easily. Data source. Now you know that before creating pivot table, we need to be selecting the data source from which it need to be considering the data to the pivot table, right? So what if you need to change the data source which you have already selected? What if you updated the data source and you need to completely change to the completely new data source? So that is made possible in data source. So you will be able to change the data source which you have initially selected while creating a pivot table. A refresh tool enables you to impart any changes which you have imparted to the data source. While creating a pivot table, you have already selected the data source. And what if you have added anything or anything new? Let it be any new product or let it be any new customer or anything of that sort. If you have imparted any modifications or any change to the data source and you need that changes to be reflected on the pivot table, then you need to apply the tool refresh in order to get that reflected in the pivot table. Now let's see how we'll be able to implement these various tools in the platform. Here, the tools in pivot table will be coming in the last 2 ribbons. So you will be having additional 2 ribbons while you are using or while you are implementing pivot table in Excel. So the 2 tool ribbon which is available in pivot table are analyze and design. So let's start with design. While you're moving on for the design ribbon, you will be able to change the layout, change the style option and other style as well. So coming to the layout tool which you are having in Excel to implement pivot table. So you are having subtotal, grand total, report layout, blank rows. So in subtotals, we are having options, do not show subtotals. So what do you mean by subtotals? Subtotals are nothing but what is being depicted here. So these are subtotals of the books. So subtotals of the book which is being implemented in the online purchase is 55 and subtotal of the books which is implemented in the offline purchase is 110. And the total or the grand total of the books are coming as 165. So this is the grand total and these are the subtotals. So if you want to remove the subtotal, you can simply go here and do not show subtotals. See, so all the subtotals for the books, bottle, bucket, calculator, all those are being removed and only the grand totals will be present. See, only the grand totals will be present. This is because we have gone to subtotals and told do not show subtotals. And we are also having the option show all subtotals at bottom of group, show all subtotals at top of group. So if you want to have the subtotal at bottom of the group, see for books the subtotal is coming at the bottom, and if you want to have that at the top, you can also try this. So the books is coming here and in that cell itself you will be having the grand total. So I think it's good to go with show subtotal at bottom of the group so that it will be adding up here 55, 55, 110, 55, 55 and these will be adding up to give you 165 and these will be the subtotal for book, bottle, bucket and all the other products as well. So that is all about subtotal. What about grand total? The same thing is available for grand total as well. So off for rows and columns, on for both rows and columns, on for rows only, on for column only. So if you want to implement any of these, you can do that as well. So let me try off for both off. Now grand total is completely turned off for all both rows and columns. See, for both rows and columns the subtotal is eliminated and we can turn on by clicking on for rows and columns. See, grand total is coming back for each of the rows and each of the columns. So for columns, grand total is coming here, and for rows, it is coming here. Grand total is coming here. See, that is all about grand totals. We'll also be able to include blank rows at wherever we want. See, we include blank row after one product. So if you want that, you can do, or if you don't, you can remove that. And report layout is one other thing. You can have a complete different layout for each of those. So this in compact form, show outline form. So this will be the outline for in which some more spacing will be given to each of the columns. And for show in tabular form, so all the cells will be depicted in a tabular form. All those things you will be able to do in the layout tool. Okay. Now let's move on and see what style tool provides us. So row headers, column headers, banded rows, banded columns. These are the things which is being provided in the style tool. Okay. So what if I untick row headers? All the row headers will not be highlighted. So when I'm ticking it, all the row headers are highlighted. Column headers. When I'm unticking column headers, sum of price, column labels, online, offline, store, grand total, all those things are not being highlighted because that box is unticked. And if you want to make that highlighted, just give a tick and all those things will be highlighted. And banded rows is nothing but giving alternate band to all the rows. So that is what is being implemented by banded rows. And banded column is the same thing which is being implemented to alternate columns. Now let's see how we'll be able to implement insert slicer. I told you before that insert slicer is nothing but it's actually a dynamic filter which we'll be able to bring in right next to the pivot table so that we'll be able to dynamically change or filter out the data which need to be depicted in the pivot table. Let's see how that can be done. For implementing insert slicer, we need to go to the ribbon, analyze, and then here we are having the tool insert slicer. So after selecting the insert slicer, you will be given the option to select which element you should be selecting in order to have the slicer based on that. So I am selecting price. So price is what I need to filter using insert slicer. So I have chosen price and then select OK. So now I have got the slicer. So this is what a slicer looks like, and it can be moved around and all the size can be adjusted here by doing this, or you also have a specific options to modify their sizes for the buttons here and for the table size here. So for the buttons can be arranged. So if you want to increase the number of columns, that can be done. So I need to have 3 columns. So I gave 3 columns, and height of the buttons need to be reduced. And also the width of the buttons also need to be reduced. So I have reduced that as well. And then coming to the table height need not be this much. So that can also be reduced here. Yes, I'm reducing that, and this looks perfect. So we have got this price slicer here. So if you want to filter out the data on the pivot table based on the price, you can select those. So now all the data in the pivot table are based on the price 55. So 55 is nothing but books, and books have been bought by these 3 persons. Okay. And what if you need to select more than one? You can just press Ctrl and select any other tools as well, and you will be able to add those elements to the pivot table. That is what a slicer does, and you can have more than one slicer as well. So if you need to have more than one slicer, you can simply go to the analyze ribbon and then insert slicer, and then here you will be able to insert any of the slicers which you would like to add. So that's it on slicer. So the next tool available to us is data source. So we know that while creating a pivot table, we need to select the data source, right? So what if you need to change the data source in between? So that can be made possible using change data source tool in Excel. We'll be able to change data source by going to the analyze ribbon, and then we'll be having the option called change data source. Here we'll be able to change the data source, and see, this is the initial data source which we had selected. So if you want to change it, you can simply change the address of the data sets which you want to implement. So these are till row 27. So yeah, these are till row 27. So what if I need till only row 21? So what I can do is I can go here and say 21. So I'll be having a new data set, and that will be only till row 21. You can also change the data source just by selecting it as well. So now see, we have given 21 and it is only till 21 here. You can also choose the data set by clicking over here and making your necessary selections. So even if you have selected the data set once, you can always change the data sets whenever you need. The final tool which we'll be talking here in this video is the refresh. What if you have made any change to the dataset which you have already selected? What if you add any new product to the list, or what if you need to add any new customers to the list you have already made? So any change to those datasets which you have already selected, and you need those changes to be imparted in the pivot table as well, those things can be done only after using the refresh tool. And you can avail this tool of refresh in the analyze ribbon, and you can have the option right here. So after clicking here, any changes which is being imparted to the data sets which I've already selected, all those things will be updated in the pivot table as well. So what I'm trying to say is, this is the data set which we have already selected. What if you need to add any new customers? Instead of Kiran, you need to make it Kumar. So any such changes if you have made in the dataset, all those things, let it be not just a customer name, it can be any product. If you're adding any new product, or if you have sold any other product apart from the data which have entered here, so if you need to add that as well, all those things can be done, all the edits and modifications can be done. And after doing all those modifications, if you need that data to be reflected in the pivot table, you need to refresh the data. By now we have come to the end of the video and we have understood what pivot table is. What is its significance and importance? Why is it so relevant while you're using Excel? All those things have been conveyed to you in the initial part of the video itself. Then we moved on to the platform Microsoft Excel and learned how to create pivot table in the platform. Then we came to know about the number of ways in which, or the number of methods in which we'll be able to apply or implement or showcase pivot table to your viewers. All those things, all those what is being imparted in the datasheet can be conveyed to your viewer very easily using pivot table and using several methods, using calculations, using currency, using value, and one after the other you will be able to add. And you can also have the complete breakup of the data which is present within the datasheet. And towards the end of the video, we looked at the various tools available in the platform and how that can be helping in order to present your pivot table to anyone, which include layout, style, insert slices, data source, and refresh. All these tools enables us to present our pivot table in the most convenient and most ideal way to your viewers. So I hope you have had a clear idea on what is pivot table and why you should be implementing or following pivot table, so that you need not go through any of the data which is provided to you, and even without studying the data within the sheet, you will be able to find out the summary or find out what it has been trying to convey with pivot table. And at the same time, it offers us to have a different perspective based on several factors. Let it be from the customer's view, let it be from the product's view, or let it be from any other view which you want. Can be manipulated based on our interest or requirement or needs. So I hope you had a very good session on pivot table, and thank you for watching till the end. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, I want to request you to hit the subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so that you don't miss out on any new update or video releases from Great Learning. If you enjoyed this video, show us some love and like this video. Knowledge increases by sharing. So make sure you share this video with your friends and colleagues. Make sure to comment on this video any queries or suggestions, and I will respond to your comments.